Maya Rodriguez wiped sweat from her face as she followed Dr. Benjamin Clark through the crystal caves of Kepler 442b. The 19-year-old student had been on this planet for only 6 months, but she already loved exploring its strange beauty. The caves sparkled with blue and purple crystals that grew from the walls like frozen flowers. "Stay close, Maya," Dr. Clark called over his shoulder. His voice echoed in the tunnel. "These caves can be dangerous if you don't know where you're going." Maya nodded and adjusted her backpack. She carried tools for collecting rock samples and a scanner that beeped softly as it recorded data. The mining colony of New Haven needed to know which areas were safe for expansion. That was their job today. They had been walking for 2 hours when Maya heard something strange. It was a low rumbling sound like thunder in the distance, but there were no storms on this part of the planet today. "Dr. Clark, do you hear that?" Maya stopped walking and listened carefully. The older man paused and tilted his head. "Hear what?" The sound came again, deeper this time. It sounded like pain. Maya felt her heart beat faster. Something was wrong. "There." She pointed toward a tunnel they hadn't explored yet. "It's coming from that direction." Dr. Clark frowned. "Maya, we're supposed to stick to the mapped areas. The colony has rules about—" Another rumble interrupted him. This time it was clearly a cry of distress. Maya had studied animal behavior in school. She knew the difference between normal sounds and calls for help. "Something is hurt," she said firmly. "We have to check." "Absolutely not." Dr. Clark shook his head. "Those tunnels lead toward worm territory. The dragon creatures that live deeper in the caves." "We never go there," Maya stared at him. The colonists had been on this planet for 3 years. They had an agreement with the worms. Humans stayed in their areas and the dragons stayed in theirs. Everyone was safe that way. But the sound came again, weaker now. "It might not be a worm," Maya said. "It could be a person. Someone might have gotten lost." Dr. Clark looked uncertain. The sound echoed through the caves once more, and this time Maya didn't wait for permission. She turned on her flashlight and started walking toward the unknown tunnel. "Maya, stop," Dr. Clark called. "Come back here right now." But Maya was already moving. Her footsteps echoed as she walked deeper into the darkness. Behind her, she heard Dr. Clark curse softly and then follow. He wouldn't leave her alone in the caves. The tunnel sloped downward and became wider as they walked. The crystals here were different. They glowed with a soft golden light instead of blue and purple. Maya had never seen anything like them. The air felt warmer too, and there was a strange smell like metal and smoke. After 10 minutes of walking, the tunnel opened into a huge cavern. Maya stopped and stared in amazement. The ceiling was so high that her flashlight couldn't reach it. Golden crystals covered the walls like stars, making everything glow with warm light. And there, in the center of the cavern, was the biggest creature Maya had ever seen. The worm was at least 30 feet long from nose to tail. Its scales were bronze-colored and reflected the crystal light like mirrors. Powerful muscles moved under its skin as it struggled weakly. Large rocks had fallen from the ceiling and trapped its back legs and tail. The creature's breathing was loud and difficult. "Oh no," Dr. Clark whispered behind her. "Maya, we need to leave now." But Maya wasn't listening. She was looking at the worm's face. Its golden eyes were the size of dinner plates, and they looked directly at her. There was intelligence in those eyes and pain, and something that looked almost like hope. The creature tried to lift its massive head, and that's when Maya saw the problem. A huge thorn from one of the planet's ironwood trees was stuck deep in the worm's left nostril. The thorn was as thick as Maya's arm and covered with sharp barbs. Dark blood had dried around the wound. The creature couldn't breathe properly. "It's hurt," Maya said softly. She took a step forward. "Maya, don't." Dr. Clark grabbed her arm. "It's a predator. It could kill you." Maya looked at the worm again. It wasn't moving toward her or showing its teeth. It just watched her with those intelligent golden eyes. Its breathing was getting worse. "Look at it," Maya said. "Really look. It's asking for help." She pulled free from Dr. Clark's grip and walked slowly toward the trapped creature. Her heart was beating so fast she could hear it in her ears, but she wasn't afraid anymore. The worm needed help, and she was the only one who could give it. The creature watched her approach but didn't move. When Maya was 10 feet away, she stopped and spoke quietly. "Hey there, big guy. That looks really painful. Let me help you." Maya opened her backpack and pulled out her medical kit. She had basic first aid supplies and some small tools. It wasn't much, but it might be enough. The worm's eyes followed her every movement as she set up her equipment. Maya could feel Dr. Clark watching from the tunnel entrance, probably ready to run if things went wrong. "This is going to hurt a little," Maya said to the worm, "but I'll be as careful as I can." She approached the creature's massive head. Up close, she could see that each scale was perfectly formed, like a work of art. The worm's breathing was shallow and quick. The thorn was wedged in deep, and removing it would be difficult. Maya climbed onto a nearby rock to get a better angle. The worm could have crushed her easily, but it held perfectly still. She reached out slowly and touched the thorn. The creature flinched but didn't pull away. "I know," Maya whispered. "Just hold still for me." Working carefully, Maya began to remove the thorn piece by piece. It took almost an hour. Her hands were shaking by the time she pulled out the last barbed piece. Blood flowed from the wound, but the worm's breathing immediately became easier. The creature took a deep breath, the first real breath it had taken in days or maybe weeks. Then it looked at Maya with those golden eyes, and she saw something that took her breath away. Gratitude. The worm made a soft sound, almost like a purr. Then, using strength Maya didn't know it still had, the creature pushed against the rocks, trapping its legs. The stones rolled away like they weighed nothing. Free at last, the worm stood to its full height. It was magnificent and terrifying and beautiful all at once. For a moment, Maya thought it might speak to her. Instead, it touched her gently with the tip of one massive claw, so carefully that it didn't even tear her clothing. Then the worm turned and disappeared into the deeper tunnels, moving like liquid shadow despite its enormous size. Maya stood alone in the golden cavern, still holding the bloody thorn. Her whole world had just changed, though she didn't know it yet. 2 weeks passed after Maya's encounter with the worm in the crystal caves. She tried to return to her normal routine at the New Haven colony, but everything felt different now. She kept thinking about those intelligent golden eyes and the gentle touch of that massive claw. Dr. Clark had made her promise not to tell anyone about what happened. "The colonists would panic," he said. "They think all worms are dangerous. If they knew one was hurt and we helped it, they might want to hunt them down or move the colony." Maya agreed to keep quiet, but it was hard. She wanted to tell someone about the amazing creature she had met. Instead, she threw herself into her studies and tried to act normal, but normal didn't last long. Strange things started happening around the colony. Jake Miller, who worked in the mining equipment shed, came to work one morning to find that a broken drill had been perfectly repaired. All the damaged parts had been carefully straightened and welded back together. "I don't understand it," Jake told his supervisor, Carol White. "The metalwork is better than anything our machines can do. Who could have fixed this overnight?" Carol had no answer. The security cameras showed nothing unusual, but the drill worked perfectly, better than when it was new. 3 days later, Linda Foster discovered that a cave-in near Mining Site 7 had been cleared away during the night. Tons of rock had been moved and stacked neatly to one side. The tunnel was now safe to use again. "It would have taken our crew 2 weeks to clear that passage," Linda reported to Colony Administrator Lisa Park. "Someone did it in one night, and we have no idea who." More strange events followed. Equipment that should have taken days to repair was fixed overnight. Dangerous areas became safe without explanation. Tools that went missing reappeared in perfect condition. Maya listened to these reports with growing excitement. She was almost certain she knew what was happening, but she needed proof. On her 5th trip back to the crystal caves, Maya got her answer. She was collecting samples near the tunnel where she had first heard the worms cry for help. The work was peaceful and quiet, and Maya found herself humming softly as she worked. A shadow passed over her, and Maya looked up to see a familiar bronze shape gliding silently through the cavern above. The worm circled once, then landed gracefully about 50 feet away. It was definitely the same creature she had helped. She could see the small scar where the thorn had been. The worm watched her work for several minutes, making no sound. "Hello again," Maya said softly. "How are you feeling?" The creature tilted its massive head as if it understood her words. Maya remembered reading that some earth animals could learn to recognize human speech patterns. Maybe worms were even smarter than that. Maya went back to her work, but she was very aware of her silent observer. When she moved to a new section of the tunnel, the worm followed at a distance. When she stopped for lunch, it settled down to rest, always keeping her in sight. "Are you protecting me?" Maya asked during her meal break. The worm's golden eyes blinked once, slowly. Maya decided to call that a yes. Over the next week, Maya returned to the caves every day. The worm was always there, watching from the shadows or gliding overhead. She started talking to it while she worked, telling it about her research and her life on the colony. The creature never answered, but Maya was sure it was listening. Sometimes it would tilt its head or make soft rumbling sounds that seemed like responses. Maya decided to call the worm Ember because of its bronze-colored scales that glowed like coals in the crystal light. Everything changed when the accident happened. At mining site 3. A tunnel collapsed, trapped 6 miners deep underground. The regular rescue equipment couldn't reach them and time was running out. The trapped men had limited air and water. Maya was in the caves when she heard the emergency sirens echoing from the colony. She ran toward the sound and Ember followed her. When they reached the mining site, chaos filled the area. The tunnel is completely blocked. Chief Engineer Carlos Mendez was telling Lisa Park, "We'd need to dig for days to reach them through the main passage." "What about the side tunnels?" Lisa asked, too unstable. Any excavation could cause another collapse. Maya studied the area, thinking hard. She had been mapping the cave systems for months. There might be another way. "I know these caves," she said, stepping forward. "There might be a natural passage that connects to the blocked tunnel." Carlos shook his head. "The maps don't show any connection." "The maps aren't complete," Maya said firmly. "I've been exploring unmapped sections. I think I can find another route." Lisa looked skeptical. "It's too dangerous to send more people into unstable tunnels." "Then send just me," Maya said. "I know the caves better than anyone." Before Lisa could answer, a huge shadow passed overhead. Everyone looked up to see Ember landing gracefully near the mine entrance. Panicked shouts filled the air as the colonists saw their first worm up close. "Stay calm," Maya called out. "It's not here to hurt anyone." But the colonists were backing away in fear. Some reached for their emergency weapons. Maya walked quickly to Ember and placed her hand on its massive leg. The worm looked down at her and made a soft, questioning sound. "These people need help," Maya said quietly. "Can you help me find another way to reach them?" Ember studied the mining equipment and the blocked tunnel entrance. Then it made a decision that amazed everyone watching. The huge creature walked to the tunnel entrance and sniffed carefully at the fallen rocks. Its massive head turned left, then right, as if it was tracking a scent or listening for sounds too faint for human ears. After a moment, Ember moved to a section of hillside about 100 yards from the main tunnel. It began digging with its powerful claws, moving rocks and soil with ease. "It knows where they are," Maya said in wonder. "It can sense them somehow." Working together, Maya and Ember found a natural passage that led toward the trapped miners. The tunnel was narrow and dangerous, but it was their best hope. Maya squeezed through spaces that seemed impossible to navigate. Behind her, Ember used its flame breath to weld support beams in place, making the passage safer. The dragon's fire was precisely controlled, hot enough to melt metal but cool enough not to harm Maya. They worked for 6 hours. Maya called out directions while Ember cleared obstacles with strength no human machine could match. Finally, they broke through to the collapsed tunnel where the miners were trapped. The 6 men were dirty and scared but alive. They stared in amazement as Maya crawled through the opening, followed by the bronze head of a worm. "Don't be afraid," Maya told them. "Ember is here to help." One by one, the miners crawled through the passage to safety. Ember waited patiently as each man passed beneath its massive body. When the last miner was safe, the worm carefully sealed the unstable tunnel with precisely applied flame, preventing future collapses. The rescue was a complete success. All 6 miners were safely returned to the surface, and no one was seriously injured. But the most important change was in how the colonists looked at Ember. Instead of fear, Maya saw wonder and gratitude in their faces. "It saved them," whispered Dr. Patricia Lane, the colony's chief scientist. "The worm actually saved human lives." Maya smiled as she watched Ember spread its huge wings and glide back toward the deeper caves. The creature had chosen to reveal itself to save the trapped miners. It had shown the colonists that worms were not monsters to be feared. For the first time, Maya allowed herself to hope that humans and worms might be able to live together as friends instead of strangers. That night, she dreamed of flying through crystal caves on bronze wings, seeing her world from a completely new perspective. 1 month after the mining rescue, life in New Haven had settled into a new routine. The colonists no longer feared the worms, though most had never seen one besides Ember. Maya continued her cave research, and Ember continued to watch over her like a loyal guardian. Everything changed on a quiet Tuesday morning when the colony's long-range sensors detected something terrifying. Maya was eating breakfast in the colony dining hall when the emergency alarm started blaring. Red lights flashed on the walls, and the automated voice system announced, "All colonists report to the main assembly hall immediately. This is not a drill." Maya dropped her fork and ran with everyone else toward the large building at the center of New Haven. The assembly hall was packed with worried faces. Colony Administrator Lisa Park stood on the stage looking grim. "I have received urgent information from our Deep Space Monitoring Station," Lisa announced. "A fleet of 12 Zephyrian warships is approaching our planet. They will arrive in approximately 2 weeks." A shocked silence filled the hall, followed by panicked voices. Everyone knew about the Zephyrians. They were a militaristic alien species that conquered planets by force. They enslaved useful populations and eliminated the rest. "What are our options?" called out Dr. Clark from the crowd. Lisa's face was pale. "Our evacuation ships can carry maybe 50 people. We have 847 colonists. Our defensive weapons are designed to deal with wildlife, not military warships." The truth hit Maya like a cold wave. They were trapped. The Zephyrians would either kill them or make them slaves. There was no way to fight back and no way to escape. But then Maya thought of Ember. The worms were native to this planet. They had lived here for thousands of years. Surely they wouldn't just let the Zephyrians take over their world. Maya raised her hand. "What if we ask the worms for help?" The hall erupted in confused voices. Most colonists had never spoken to a worm. They didn't even know if the creatures could understand human language. "That's impossible," said Chief Engineer Carlos Mendez. "No one has ever successfully communicated with them beyond basic territorial agreements." "I have," Maya said firmly. "Ember and I communicate all the time. Maybe I can talk to the other worms." Lisa looked skeptical. "Maya, pointing at mining sites and asking for help with rescues is very different from explaining interstellar warfare." "I have to try," Maya insisted. "It's our only chance." That afternoon, Maya went to the crystal caves with a heavy heart. She found Ember waiting in their usual meeting spot, the golden cavern where they had first met. "Ember," Maya said seriously, "I need to show you something important." She had brought her tablet computer loaded with star charts and information about the Zephyrians. Maya wasn't sure how to explain spaceships and alien invasions to a creature that lived in caves. She started with simple drawings in the sandy cave floor. First, she drew a circle to represent their planet. Then she drew smaller circles approaching from space. Ember watched with interest as Maya worked. The worm's golden eyes followed every line and shape. "Bad aliens," Maya said, pointing to the small circles. "They want to hurt us. Hurt the humans. Hurt the worms too." She drew stick figures representing people and tried to show them being captured or killed. It felt silly, but Ember was paying close attention. Then Maya had an idea. She accessed the colony's database on her tablet and found recordings of Zephyrian attacks on other worlds. The videos were horrifying. Cities burning, people running in terror. Beautiful landscapes turned into industrial wastelands. Maya showed the tablet screen to Ember. The worm stared at the images, and Maya saw something that made her hopeful. The creature's eyes showed understanding and anger. Ember made a low growling sound and pointed one claw at the tablet. Then it did something amazing. The worm began to draw in the sand with its claw tip. The dragon drew their planet just like Maya had, but then it drew many more circles around the planet, far more than Maya had drawn. And some of those circles had X marks through them. Maya stared at the drawings. "You've seen this before. The Zephyrians have attacked other worm worlds." Ember nodded its massive head, a gesture it had learned from watching humans. The dragon drew more pictures. Worm cities burning, dragon families separated. "Young worms taken away in ships, they're your enemies too," Maya whispered. Ember stood up and walked toward the deeper tunnels. It looked back at Maya and made a questioning sound. Maya understood. Ember wanted her to follow. They walked deeper into the cave system than Maya had ever gone before. The tunnels became wider and more elaborate. Golden crystals gave way to silver and blue ones that filled the passages with different colored light. After an hour of walking, the tunnel opened into something that took Maya's breath away. It was a vast underground city. Crystal spires rose from the cavern floor toward a ceiling so high it disappeared in darkness. Channels of flowing lava provided heat and light, creating a warm, comfortable environment. Bridges made of woven metal connected different levels of the city, and everywhere there were worms. Maya saw hundreds of them, dragons of all sizes and colors. Some were as small as horses, probably young ones. Others were even larger than Ember. They glided through the air between the crystal towers or rested on carved ledges. Some worked with tools, shaping metal and crystal with their precise flame breath. This wasn't just a cave where wild animals lived. This was a civilization. The other worms noticed Maya immediately. Many flew closer to investigate the strange human who had entered their sacred city. But none showed aggression. Ember had brought her here, so she must be welcome. Ember led Maya to the largest crystal spire in the center of the city. At its base was a wide platform where several enormous worms waited. These were clearly the elders, the leaders of the worm community. The largest elder was a magnificent creature with silver scales that sparkled like stars. Maya decided to call it Astral because of its beautiful markings. Ember spoke to the elders in the worm language, a complex series of rumbles, chirps, and flame patterns. Maya couldn't understand the words, but she recognized some of the gestures Ember made. The dragon was telling them about her and about the approaching threat. The elders listened carefully. Sometimes one would ask a question and Ember would answer. Maya was amazed by how sophisticated their communication was. Finally, Astral approached Maya directly. The silver worm studied her with ancient wise eyes. Then it did something unexpected. It drew in the sand just like Ember had done. Astral drew the planet, the approaching ships, and the human colony. But then it drew something else. Worms and humans fighting side by side against the invaders. "You want to form an alliance?" Maya said in wonder. Astral nodded and made a complex sound that somehow conveyed agreement and determination. But then the other elders began to argue. Maya couldn't understand their words, but their body language was clear. Some wanted to help. Others wanted to hide deeper in the caves until the danger passed. A few seemed to think the humans should fight their own battles. The debate continued for hours. Maya sat quietly watching the most important political discussion in the history of both species. Finally, Astral made a decision. The Silver Elder drew one more picture in the sand. Maya and Ember working together during the mining rescue. Then Astral spoke directly to Maya in broken but understandable human words. "Trust. You, Ember. Trust. We help humans fight together." Maya felt tears of relief running down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much." But even as she spoke, Maya knew the real work was just beginning. Convincing the worms to help was only the first step. Now she had to return to New Haven and convince 800 terrified humans to trust their lives to creatures they had feared for years. The alliance between their species would need to be built on more than just mutual need. It would require understanding, cooperation, and faith in each other. Looking around at the crystal city filled with intelligent, proud dragons, Maya realized that humans and worms had more in common than either species had ever imagined. Both valued family, both protected their homes, and both were willing to fight for what they believed in. The Zephyrians were about to discover that they had picked the wrong planet to invade. Maya returned to New Haven with the most important news in the colony's history. The emergency meeting she called filled the assembly hall beyond capacity. Colonists stood in the aisles and crowded around the doorways. "The worms have agreed to help us fight the Zephyrians," Maya announced, "but only if we work together as true allies." The reaction was immediate and mixed. Some colonists cheered with relief. Others looked skeptical or frightened. Jake Miller, the equipment supervisor, stood up from his seat. "How do we know we can trust them?" he asked. "These are the same creatures we've been afraid of for 3 years." "Because they're fighting for their home too," Maya replied. "The Zephyrians have destroyed worm colonies on other planets. This isn't just our war anymore." Dr. Patricia Lane raised her hand. "What exactly are we talking about? How many worms? What can they do in battle?" Maya had spent the previous night preparing for these questions. She activated the large display screen at the front of the hall and showed the recordings she had made in the worm city. The colonists gasped as they saw the crystal spires and flying dragons. Many had never imagined that the worms lived in such an advanced civilization. "There are at least 300 adult worms in the underground city," Maya explained. They can fly. They have natural armor that can stop energy weapons, and their flame breath can melt through starship hulls. Chief Engineer Carlos Mendez leaned forward with interest. Can we communicate with them effectively? Battle coordination requires precise timing. That's what we need to work on, Maya said. I can translate basic concepts, but we need better communication systems for complex operations. Over the next few days, Maya became the bridge between two very different worlds. She spent her mornings in the colony, working with the engineering teams to develop communication devices. The afternoons were spent in the crystal caves, teaching worms about human technology and learning about dragon capabilities. Carlos proved to be invaluable in creating the communication systems. He designed a series of colored light signals that could be seen from great distances. Each color and pattern had a specific meaning: attack, retreat, enemy spotted, all clear. The visual signals work well, Carlos told Maya after testing the system with Ember. But what about when visibility is poor? Maya had an answer for that too. She had learned that worms could hear sounds at frequencies too low for human ears. Carlos built sonic transmitters that could send coded messages the dragons could understand, even in the middle of battle. Dr. Patricia Lane studied worm biology to understand their strengths and limitations. She discovered that the dragons could survive in space for short periods by slowing their metabolism and holding their breath. Their scales were incredibly tough but had gaps at the joints that could be vulnerable to precise weapons. They're remarkable creatures, Patricia told Maya after examining samples of shed scales that Ember had provided. Their biological design is almost perfect for aerial combat. Meanwhile, Maya learned about worm society and military organization. The dragons had fought wars before, defending their planet against other alien invasions. They understood tactics and strategy in ways that surprised the human colonists. Astral, the Silver Elder, became Maya's primary contact for military planning. Through a combination of drawings, gestures, and simple words, they developed a battle strategy that used the strengths of both species. The worms knew about underground tunnel networks that spanned the entire continent. They could move large numbers of troops quickly and launch surprise attacks from unexpected directions. The humans provided intelligence about Zephyrian technology and tactics, gathered from distress signals sent by other colonies before they fell. But the most important development was the growing bond between Maya and Ember. Their connection had evolved beyond simple communication. Maya found that she could sense Ember's emotions and physical condition. When the dragon was tired, Maya felt tired. When Ember was excited about something, Maya felt that excitement too. Ember seemed to experience the same connection. The dragon could anticipate Maya's thoughts and needs with uncanny accuracy. During practice flights, yes, Maya had learned to ride on Ember's back. They moved together with perfect coordination. It's like you're reading each other's minds, observed Dr. Clark during one of their training sessions. Maya wasn't sure that was wrong. Whatever was happening between her and Ember, it made them an incredibly effective team. They could coordinate complex maneuvers without speaking or even looking at each other. The training sessions became daily events that fascinated both species. Humans and worms worked together in ways no one had thought possible. Human riders learned to fight from dragonback, while worms learned to carry passengers safely during high-speed aerial combat. Some colonists remained nervous about working so closely with the dragons. Linda Foster, who managed the food production systems, worried about having worms near the agricultural areas. What if they accidentally start fires? She asked during a planning meeting. We can't replace our crops if they get burned. Maya understood her concerns. She arranged for Linda to meet some of the smaller, younger worms who were especially good at controlling their flame breath. Watching a dragon carefully roast vegetables to perfect doneness without burning a single leaf helped ease Linda's fears. The most skeptical colonist was Gary Stone, the colony's head of security. He had military experience from Earth and didn't trust anyone he couldn't give orders to. How do we know they won't turn on us after the battle? Gary demanded. These creatures could wipe out our colony easily. The same way they know we won't turn on them, Maya replied. We have to trust each other or we'll all die separately. Gary remained unconvinced until he witnessed a training accident. A young colonist named Pete Williams fell from his worm during a practice flight. The dragon, a blue-scaled female Maya called Sky, could have let Pete fall to his death. Instead, Sky dove at dangerous speed and caught Pete safely in her claws, even though the rescue put her own life at risk. They really do care about protecting us, Gary admitted after checking Pete for injuries and finding only minor scrapes. As the Zephyrian arrival date approached, the alliance between humans and worms grew stronger. Children from the colony visited the Crystal City and played games with young dragons. YRM elders shared their knowledge of the planet's geography and weather patterns. Human engineers helped dragons repair and improve their ancient city infrastructure. Maya found herself at the center of it all, translating not just words but entire cultures. She helped humans understand worm traditions and explained human customs to curious dragons. The most touching moment came when Astral presented Maya with a gift, a piece of crystal carved into the shape of a flame. When Maya touched it, the crystal glowed with warm light. "Honor gift," Astral said in careful human words. "You bridge between peoples, make understanding." Maya wore the crystal pendant proudly. It had become a symbol of the alliance, recognized by both species as a sign of cooperation and friendship. But even as relationships improved, the reality of the approaching war weighed on everyone's minds. The Zephyrians were experienced conquerors with powerful weapons and advanced ships. The human-worm alliance was strong, but would it be strong enough? 5 days before the estimated Zephyrian arrival, Maya stood on a cliff overlooking the colony with Ember beside her. Below them, humans and dragons worked together, preparing defenses and practicing battle formations. "We've come so far," Maya said to her companion. "A month ago, most humans were afraid to even look at a worm. Now we're trusting our lives to each other." Ember made a soft rumbling sound that Maya had learned to interpret as agreement. The dragon's golden eyes looked toward the stars where their enemies were approaching. Maya felt Ember's determination through their bond, and it strengthened her own resolve. Whatever happened in the coming battle, they would face it together. Human and worm, united by friendship and fighting for their shared home. The Zephyrians thought they were coming to conquer a simple mining colony, defended by primitive humans and mindless beasts. They were about to discover how wrong they were. The Zephyrian fleet arrived exactly when predicted. 12 massive warships that blotted out the stars as they entered orbit around Kepler 442b. From her position in the underground command center, Maya watched the enemy vessels on the colony's sensors. "They're starting their bombardment," reported Communications Officer Rachel Barnes, "targeting the main colony buildings." But the buildings being destroyed were empty. The real colonists were safely hidden in the deep cave systems, protected by miles of solid rock. The structures being hit were decoys that the human-worm alliance had built over the past week. Maya felt Ember's excitement through their bond. The dragon was positioned with other worms in hidden mountain caves, ready to strike when the ground invasion began. "First phase is working perfectly," said Lisa Park from the command center. "They think they've crippled us." The Zephyrian bombardment continued for 6 hours. From orbit, it looked like the human colony had been completely destroyed. The aliens had no idea that hundreds of people and dragons were watching from underground, waiting for the perfect moment to strike back. "Ground transports launching," Rachel announced. 12 ships, probably carrying about 50 soldiers each. This was it. The moment everything would be decided. Maya climbed onto Ember's back as they emerged from their hidden cave. Around them, other human worm teams took to the air. The sight was magnificent and terrifying. Bronze, silver, blue, and green dragons carrying human riders into battle against alien invaders. The Zephyrian ground forces landed near what they thought were the ruins of New Haven. The alien soldiers were tall, gray-skinned creatures with 4 arms and advanced energy weapons. They moved with military precision, scanning for survivors to capture. They never saw the attack coming. Ember and Maya led the first strike, diving from the clouded sky like a bronze meteor. Maya used her targeting laser to mark enemy positions, while Ember's flame breath turned Zephyrian equipment into molten slag. The aliens' reaction was immediate confusion and terror. Their intelligence reports had said nothing about flying reptiles or aerial cavalry. Some fired at the attacking dragons, but their energy beams bounced harmlessly off the worms' armored scales. "Ground teams, move in," Maya called into her communicator. From hidden tunnel entrances, human soldiers emerged alongside worm ground forces. The aliens found themselves surrounded by an enemy they didn't understand and couldn't effectively fight. But the real battle was still to come. The Zephyrian commanders in orbit quickly realized their ground forces were under attack by an organized resistance. Energy beams began firing from the warships, trying to hit the flying dragons. "We need to take out their main command ship," Maya told Ember as they dodged orbital weapons fire. "That's the only way to stop the bombardment." Ember understood immediately. The dragon's powerful wings carried them higher into the atmosphere, toward the massive Zephyrian flagship that hung in orbit like a metal moon. This was the most dangerous part of their plan. Maya had studied the ship's design and identified its weak points, but reaching them would require flying through a maze of defensive weapons. Other human worm teams followed them into space. Dragons could survive in the vacuum for short periods by entering a hibernation-like state, and the human riders wore emergency spacesuits. The sight of flying dragons in space seemed to break something in the Zephyrian defenders' minds. They had conquered dozens of worlds, but they had never faced anything like this. Maya guided Ember toward the flagship's main weapon array. If they could disable it, the ship would be helpless. But getting there meant flying through a storm of energy blasts and missile fire. "Left now," Maya called, and Ember rolled sideways just as a massive beam passed through the space where they had been flying. Their bond made them incredibly effective in combat. Maya could sense Ember's instincts and intentions, while Ember responded to Maya's tactical knowledge before she even spoke commands. They reached the weapon array, and Maya went to work with her engineering tools while Ember used precise flame bursts to melt through the ship's armor. Working together, they disabled the primary cannons in less than 10 minutes. But as they prepared to leave, disaster struck. A Zephyrian fighter ship that had been hiding behind the flagship opened fire with everything it had. Maya saw the energy blast coming and knew they couldn't dodge in time. Ember made a choice that would haunt Maya forever. The dragon twisted its body to shield Maya from the blast, taking the full force of the weapon across its back and wings. The energy beam burned through Ember's scales and sent them tumbling toward the planet below. Maya felt her companion's pain as if it were her own, magnified by their psychic bond. "Ember!" Maya screamed as they fell through the atmosphere. "Hold on!" The dragon was barely conscious, its wings too damaged to control their descent. They were going to crash, and there was nothing Maya could do to stop it. But then other worms surrounded them, forming a living net that caught the falling pair and carried them safely to the ground. Astral was among the rescuers, the Silver Elder's eyes filled with concern for both human and dragon. Maya rode with Ember to the underground medical center that Dr. Patricia Lane had set up in the crystal caves. The dragon's injuries were severe but not fatal, thanks to the quick rescue. While Patricia worked to treat Ember's burns, the battle above continued. But the loss of their command ship had broken the Zephyrian formation. The alien fleet was in chaos, their ground forces cut off and surrounded. Admiral Crix, the Zephyrian fleet commander, requested a meeting under a flag of truce. Maya was still exhausted from the battle, but she was the only one who could speak for both species in the alliance. The meeting took place in the main cavern where Maya had first met Ember. Admiral Crix was a tall, imposing figure in black armor, but his four eyes showed confusion and something that might have been respect. "I have conquered 23 worlds," Crix said through his translation device. "I have faced every type of military force in the galaxy, but I have never seen anything like what happened here today." Maya stood beside Ember, one hand resting on her companion's bandaged flank. The dragon was recovering slowly, but was determined to be present for this historic moment. "You expected to find primitive colonists and mindless beasts," Maya said. "Instead, you found two peoples fighting together for their home." Crix studied the dragons and humans around him. Worm elders stood beside human colonists. Children of both species watched the proceedings with curious eyes. "Your alliance," Crix said slowly, "it is not based on conquest or domination. It's based on friendship," Maya replied. "We helped each other because we chose to, not because anyone forced us." The Zephyrian admiral was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke again. "In all my conquests, I have never seen two species work together as equals. Usually one dominates the other. But here, he looked around the crystal cavern. Here, you have created something new. Crix made a decision that surprised everyone, including his own officers. We will withdraw from this system. This world has something we cannot conquer and should not destroy. The Zephyrian fleet departed the next day, but not in defeat. Several of their scientists asked permission to return later as peaceful observers, hoping to study the human-worm alliance. Word of the battle spread quickly through the galaxy. Other worlds that had been threatened by the Zephyrians sent messages of congratulations and requests for advice on forming their own interspecies alliances. Maya became the first official human-worm ambassador, establishing protocols for cooperation that other worlds used as models. She and Ember traveled to other planets, teaching the principles of mutual respect and partnership. But their favorite place was still the crystal caves of Kepler 442b. In the years that followed, New Haven grew into a true multicultural city, where humans and worms lived and worked together. The children were the most amazing part of the new world. Human kids learned to speak the worm language, while young dragons picked up human customs and technology. They played together in the crystal caverns, building friendships that would last lifetimes. Dr. Patricia Lane established the first interspecies medical center, where human doctors worked alongside worm healers who had their own ancient knowledge of medicine and biology. Carlos Mendez founded an engineering school where both species shared their knowledge. Human technology combined with worm craftsmanship created innovations that neither could have achieved alone. Maya often thought about the day she had pulled a simple thorn from a dragon's nostril. Such a small act of kindness had led to the greatest alliance in galactic history. 5 years after the battle, Maya stood on the same cliff where she had once worried about the approaching Zephyrian fleet. Now she watched human and worm children playing together in the valley below, building a future that neither species could have imagined alone. Ember, fully healed and stronger than ever, settled beside her with a contented rumble. "Look what we built together," Maya said, touching the crystal pendant that Astral had given her years ago. It still glowed with warm light, a symbol of the bridge between worlds. Through their bond, Maya felt Ember's happiness and pride. They had protected their home, saved their people, and created something beautiful from what had started as fear and misunderstanding. The galaxy was a bigger,